Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Wings channel. I'm going to take a look today at the Astrological Weather Report for the week of August 12th through the 18th. And we've got a few things, some things going on. Mercury retrograde going back into Leo. We've got Mars square Saturn this week. And then also Mercury retrograde is going to do the inferior conjunction to the Sun. Today on Monday we have a fixed T-square going on between the square of the Moon and Sun and Uranus. So a few other things I'm going to talk about too. But first, a little bit of business. The Astrological Wings channel is a free video blog that I give on YouTube every week. And if you like what you see, please become a member. If you have a YouTube account, become a follower, that is, of the blog. And don't forget to turn on your notifications, because that'll let you know when I post the blog every week, which is usually Monday. And remember, before the blog was a YouTube channel, it was a podcast for many years. So it's still available on podcast still. You don't get the little bit of video, but that's okay. It's really the audio that's the important thing, you know, and that frees you up to maybe check out the blog at other times where you can't be attached to the video, maybe when you're driving to work or whatever, you know, working out at the gym, whatever it may be. And remember, if you have an Instagram account too, Astrological Wings channel has an Instagram page, so follow that too, because I do post the link there every week, so it'll show up in the newsreel there. And also sometimes I post extra information during the week just in commentary form. Doesn't happen all the time, but there's some, you know, sometimes an extra tidbit or two in there on certain days. And then also I do always put it on my private Facebook account. So if you want to friend me, it's Matthew with 2 T's Lawton, Lauten. And if you friend me at the Facebook, it'll come up in your newsreel every week. And then the other place you can always find it is on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. I embed all the blogs there. It takes you right to the YouTube channel video. There's ones from the past there, so if you missed like last month's or something and you want to check it out, they're still embedded there. I also do a weekly calendar there on Earth Day event type things, so you know that's always worth checking out too. And the other thing is, the blog is a free service, right? So what I really ask people to do to pay me back, to pay it forward, is to pass the link on to somebody else that they might know who might be interested in it. And that's really how I really love to get all my new followers. So if you can help me out with that for the service of providing the blog, I'd really appreciate it. If you do want to give a donation to the blog, here's my Venmo handle, at Matthew-Lawton. And every $5 you give, you get entered into a raffle to win possibly a free reading at the end of the quarter. So check that out. And then the other best way to support me, guys, I am a professional astrologer counselor. I've done professional astrology counseling for over 20 years. I was trained for 7 years in it. And I would love to do your chart or someone else's chart or whatever other astrology work you might be interested in. On my website, there's a full menu of the services I have with the prices and all that. If the, you know, I can work with you on the cost if it's not within your budget, you know. So if you know someone or you need that reading yourself, it's time for it. I'd love to work with you. Check that out. Get in touch with me. There's my email right there. There's also direct email right on the site. Now, remember, you know, too, when I'm going through the blog, if you're not familiar with astrology, you don't want to attach yourself to the astrological things that I'm saying. You want to listen to my interpretations, and that way you can work with the energy. That's what astrology is all about, you guys, is working with the energy that's already out there so that we can manifest it in ways that we would like to, you know. So we have to be aware of that energy first, and then we can start to self-empower ourselves and do that. So yeah, would love your support on all those levels. So, you know, please help me out. Okay, so let's get into this. So Monday, today, there's this, the moon is in between its new and full phase, exactly halfway on Monday. And that's what we call the second quarter, or the square of the moon to the sun. So like when the moon is new, the sun and moon are conjunct, right? And when the moon is full, they're opposite one another. So in between each of those two phases, there's a midpoint where they square one another, and that's always a time of tension. Also, it's a point where the moon and sun are not working really well together, and that means within us, our will, our drive, our motivation can be at conflict with the emotions that are going on. So what's interesting this week is it forms a fixed T-square because they're all in fixed signs. The moon is in Scorpio, the sun is in Leo, and it's forming a fixed T-square with Uranus in Taurus. So the moon is going to be opposite Uranus today, while both of them are squaring the sun. And so what does this all mean? You know, like I said, it really has a lot to do with a conflict between the will and emotions when ends within us. And so, you know, the moon in Scorpio, the sun in Leo, first off, you know, it's that Leo time of the year. And like I said, it's a time when we're really expressing ourselves, where we're playful, where we're optimistic, positive, lighthearted, really everything that Scorpio is not. So you can see the conflict already, right? The only thing they really have in common is this really like fixed energy, although there are some other things in common, but this isn't the place to get into that right now. But the thing is, the moon in Scorpio wants depth. It wants seriousness. So it's like, you know, Leo is kind of more this playful, you know, going along, happy-go-lucky energy, you know. And the moon in Scorpio is like, well, wait a minute, like all that stuff that you're taking in like that, that's all lighthearted, it can lead down to some really intensely deep places if we're not really careful. And you know, so it sees it as like almost like this critical eye of the Leo energy of like being, you know, too much out there, too expansive, too open, too light, you know. And then what is that bringing back to me? Is it bringing back to me like emotional distress and all this intense energy and passion and drama? So there's like this conflict going on. Now remember, sun and moon are both the light, so when, you know, and square initiates action. It makes us want to act in relation to what is going on, the problems that it represents. So there's all this tension going on, and it does give us a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy available when the moon is square the sun, you know, and if we can focus that energy on what we really want to do, we can get a lot of things done. The problem is there's going to be a lot of little things that nag at us on the way. Many of the times when the moon is square sun, there'll be multiple issues going on at once, and it feels and can be a very stressful kind of day where there's like just stuff hitting us, and it seems like certain situations and people are really like the crux of a lot of those problems. So we can get, you know, our relationships therefore can suffer a lot too, because we can really perceive them. And that's where that Scorpio energy can really come in and get really intense in relation to other people, and, you know, seeing their Leo-ness, their uniqueness, their individuality, and it just not, you know, somehow triggering something in that emotional side of us that gets us down into that Scorpio energy of being like, you know, upset with them, annoyed, even angry, getting, you know, trying to control them, manipulate them, etc. And then you throw in the wild card of Uranus too with this, and it's like, you know, there's this energy. I really think the Uranus energy feeds the Leo part. So it's like it wants to break away from all that heaviness. You know, it's like, come on, you know, I want to rebel against anything or anyone who's going to restrict me in these situations. The problem with the moon Uranus, though, is we can get so overly stimulated and excited, even in ways that may be positive in trying to make change, or just trying to break away from the things that we perceive as holding them back, that we can get very impulsive with our decision making and really regret what we do pretty quickly. You know, it can be one of those things where, oh, why did I do that? You know, and, you know, you're kind of reacting out of like shock and impulse, and all of a sudden really quickly realize, oh, you know, I created my own accident, I created my own mess, you know, I kind of got really like sloppy, or I kind of got like rough with the way I was, you know, talking or handling other people, and now I've got myself in this place where, oh, I've got a little mess going on. So like I said, a lot of things will be pulling at us, and that's why we can get impulsive like that, when we're feeling like little things pulling, and then some stress point hits, and we go boom, we make some decision, and we're like, oops, we're in a troublesome place, and it can get really disruptive for our relationships. It can mess up our normal routine. There can be a lot of like surprises that are a lot of emotional surprises that we have to kind of adjust to on the fly, kind of not get to integrate them very well before the next one comes up. And it can get us like into very contrary type positioning too, where we purposely will start to rebel and do surprising things to each other, And many times too, with the Uranus energy, we're seeking out something new, some kind of new excitement. So many times we'll go and rebel against the people who have been in our lives a long time and try to find new, exciting, different, stimulating people. But once again, a lot of that will represent instability, short-termness, and being impulsive with what we do with them, and then maybe quickly regretting it, especially in relation to the other more stable relationships we have. Uranus brings a lot of instability into the emotions and into the energy of the day. So really be careful today, about that, because we're going to feel that. We're going to feel worked up, especially when things are really bugging us, and we may overreact, and really may regret it and do some damage to ourselves and to our relationships. Like I said, what we really want to do is take that conviction we still have, take that desire we still have to make things change, and use that to drive us. And I think really the best way today would be to work alone if you could on stuff like that, Okay, so next thing, Wednesday, there's a couple things Mercury retrograde. Remember, I mapped out its journey last week for us. So there's a couple things Mercury retrograde is going to do this week where it's going back. And on Wednesday's the first day, it will actually do the quincunx to Pluto again. And then it's going to slide back into Leo later on in the day. So if you guys remember about the Mercury Leo, quincunx Pluto, right? It's embedded within this Mercury retrograde cycle. Any transits that Mercury makes as it's going into retrograde, it's going to repeat those transits with those planets a second time in the retrograde motion, and then when it goes forward again, it'll hit it a third time. So basically, that means the energy of those aspects that are going to be repeated 3 times are really impregnated within the whole energy of the whole Mercury retrograde cycle. So this Mercury quincunx Pluto that's going to be exact the second time on Wednesday is really embedded within the cycle. And if I remember telling you guys about this a week or two ago, this can give us a very obsessive mind. We can really go down a rabbit hole in things that are disturbing us, and especially people that we're struggling with, people who represent power or have some kind of authority in our life. We can get ourselves involved in very complex, complicated arrangements and social contracts, so to speak, with others. We can also get involved in very almost secretive behavior that spawns suspicion. It's like we can almost see within each other the things that are driving people that they may not even recognize so much themselves. But remember, that's going on inside you too, and that people are seeing that in you too. So there's this very intense energy, and basically it really represents that we are going through this Mercury retrograde period. We're going through a lot of psychological changes, and it requires really looking into ourselves, into our own behavior on deep levels, and other people's too, and then kind of figuring out where we're going to adjust to that, where we're going to release that, where we're going to let go. So we're trying to let go of old patterns of behavior, clear that stuff out. But that's some of the stuff that's blocking you know, and creating some of the Mercury retrograde mess is that stuff is stuck. So it's so that, you know, so there's a lot of that stuff still going on, and it's going to hit the second hit this week, where it can really get you into an intense thing. And remember, the best thing to do with it is to bring it within. Look at your own psychology. Look at the things that are really driving you. Become aware of them and start to release them. Let them go. Purge them out, you know, rather than trying to, like, you know, focus so much on the outside thing, because it's going to get you very compulsive and obsessive with that and with other people, and can really dissolve into some ugly kind of power struggle type stuff. Right after that, Mercury does slide back into Leo, and going into the rest of the Mercury retrograde period will be in fire signs. So we have to really look at our own motivations and drives now. Like, where are they off, and why is that causing, you know, this Mercury retrograde energy to come back into our lives, you know? So, you know, basically I think the issue when Mercury retrograde goes back into Leo is we think we're right, you know, and we're so convinced we're right that we can get arrogant, self-righteous, and prideful about it. And that's a very stubborn, once again, a fixed position to take. And that's what can start to create all those problems. If you think you're always right and you're communicating like that, you're shutting other people down, actually. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to shut you down. They're going to feed on that, you know. And then once again, thinking you're always right, and then you're not making the adjustments that you make, and then that you have to make, and then when something goes awry during Mercury retrograde, that's the reason again, because, you know, you haven't really dealt with these stubborn positions, these stuck positions that you have. So it's going to cause like delays, misunderstandings, miscommunications, all those things that Mercury retrograde, you know, does. And I'll tell you too, one of the things about this one too, you know, is being kind of like a know-it-all with Mercury and Leo too. You better make sure that what you're saying is the facts and the truth, you know, because once again, if you're doing that spur of the moment, know-it-all, prideful, arrogant way, and Mercury retrograde will trip you up, and it'll expose that you didn't have all the information and everything, and then you look like the fool, you know, so that can once again damage your own reputation, you know, with others. Just the things that Leo really wants, recognition, respect, all that can be damaged if you're going into a quick judgment of others and thinking you're giving them the right advice, and then they find out, well, actually it wasn't the right advice, you know. And so, like, you know, just, you know, being really careful too about getting into hot-headed situations with other people where you're both like stuck on that thought pattern and trying to convince others. So very interesting energy there too going on. Now on Thursday, I don't have it on here, the sun is going to trine Chiron, okay? And so the sun's in Leo, Chiron's in Aries, and the moon is actually in Sag. So like Wednesday night, as the trine to Chiron, Sun and Chiron is starting to get close to perfect, the moon will actually trine them both also, which is what we call a grand trine. So Wednesday night into Thursday, very positive energy. This is a chance where we can really show our talents. We can shine, you know, we can, you know, allow that stuff to go out there and let people see the talents and abilities we have, and we do that by helping each other out, by giving support to each other, by allowing those talents to help other people, to heal other people, to teach other people. So this is like really, really good energy, guys, to work with, like, and we can learn too. This gives us a really good attitude where we can learn about things, where we can get, you know, we'll tap into the best parts of ourselves, where we can figure out what those are, and where we can be really helpful to other people. So this is really healing for our life journey, this kind of energy, you know. It can be very creative in finding new ways to output the talents that we have and getting the recognition that we have, and can really help people with their issues and help ourselves with our own issues. You know, we're very open and receptive to learning new things about the world and ourselves, and it can really get us into a really good new place with that brings like a healing energy inside to us. We really can feel really good about that satisfaction, fulfillment, you know, that kind of energy. So really good energy there too, for us to work with all day on that on Thursday. Now, Thursday also has another one of those Mercury coming back to one of those aspects again. It's quincunx Neptune. And I talked about it last week. This can put us in a very idealistic frame of mind. So idealistic that we're kind of floating away and unable to communicate what we're really thinking and feeling to others. So there's that misunderstandings part that comes in with Neptune during this period again, where like we just are having a really hard time putting into words what our inspiration and ideals are, and so that can create a lot of misunderstandings, you know, that kind of energy. And just like, once again, kind of like just like being a little bit disconnected to the real world too, so that can bring in like a lot of confusion, like, you know, not being able to tell people exactly how we feel. And then there's an emotional sensitivity to that too, that energy where we're picking up the emotions of others around us, and that can add to the confusion. Like, can we discern whether it's ours or someone else's, or where it's coming from? It can even trigger things from the past, so it can be really confusing energy once again, and that obviously will feed all that Mercury retrograde stuff of misunderstandings, miscommunications, misconnections, all that kind of things, you know. And it really can be, you know, definitely a low spot with that energy during the Mercury retrograde cycle, where it really feels like, oh, I'm just really having to internalize now. I just need to bring all this energy in, you know. So Friday, we have one of the bigger transits of the week is Mars square Saturn, and this is not an easy one. You know, this is definitely not an easy one. Mars is about our actions, and when it hits Saturn, we have to be very cautious in our approach to things. It's good to take on a conservative type attitude, because, like, basically things are going to move slow anyway. So if we're trying to push things, we're just going to end up being really stressed out and frustrated. One of the things about Mars square Saturn is, like, our normal energy is restricted somehow. It may be that physically our bodies are not feeling it, you know, maybe with, you know, the illness or injury or something slowing us down. Many times with Saturn, it can be people who are in authority, our bosses, you know, other authorities that are actually stopping us or really slowing us down from doing the things we want to do. It's interesting too, because Mars Saturn, the anger builds up inside very slowly, but a lot of times we have a very difficult time, like, you know, expressing that anger. So it's held inside, and once again, the Mars Saturn shows that the body can start to feel that it can get us ill, it can get us hurt, it can do all those kind of things, you know. But somehow, you know, like, circumstances, situations, other people, authorities are all slowing us down. And this can really undermine our confidence too, because it doesn't feel like things are working the way we normally work. It's almost like the situations and the people are poking at our most weak spots and hitting us there over and over and over again. So that can be really frustrating, you know. It can be like, you know, but, you know, what we do a lot of times is we take it inside and brood about it, rather than, like, trying to express it and work something out. And the best way to use this energy, you guys, is to work. You know, it's good for work, definitely good for work. And if you can work on something, even yourself, really, in a very, like, cautious step-by-step manner, where you know that the step you're on is stable before you next one, like before you step up to the next one. And because if you don't, like, things are probably going to end up blocking you. And especially with Mercury retrograde, too. The two of these energies will work together and probably really slow things down for us in the real world at the end of this week. So we have to be very aware that it may be a very frustrating time, and that, inside we could be feeling a lot of anger about the way things are going. Now, Sunday's a pretty busy day. There's a few things going on Sunday. Once again, Mercury retrograde is going to start the journey out with a second hit to a square to Uranus. And once again, if you remember, Mercury and Uranus is, both represent the mind, the lower mind, the intellect, and the higher mind, the intuition. And when they get together, it can bring a lot of ingenuity. It can bring a lot of great ideas, But right now, Mercury's retrograde. And when those two get together, those ideas fly at us so quickly that they're really unstable, and a lot of them are not really thought out well, and a lot of them probably aren't going to stick to the real world, especially during Mercury retrograde. But we have to be aware that there may be some ingenious ones in there, but it is not a time really to be bringing them out, though. I think this is a time to really kind of comb through that stuff while Mercury is retrograde and try to see which ones might actually have a valid chance at sticking to the world as we know it, because a lot of them may not. But it does have a tendency, because there's so much of that energy coming at us, so, that it can get us really worked up, get our thoughts nervous and scattered, get our communications and approach to things very undisciplined. Once again, we can, make decisions that mess us up, like spur of the moment, kind of like this thing here, the T-square with the Uranus. Uranus, can sometimes we get very impulsive with that energy, and we quickly regret what we do. So this is not a day, Sunday, where we want to really make a serious decision on things, because they, many times they're just off base. It's a very edgy energy, and we do things impulsively, I mean, we are looking for new energy and new experiences and even new connections with people in this, so we can get some of that, and it can really excite us and stimulate us, but it is going to be a lot of energy coming in to try to process at once. And with Mercury retrograde, that's what we want to do. We want to bring it in and process it inside before we make any decision in the outside world. And then the Sun and Mercury do their inferior conjunction that day also. So that's when Mercury and the Sun do their second conjunction to one another. And to me, that's the middle of the Mercury retrograde period. One of the things about Mercury retrograde is it really interiorizes us, there's a lot more self-talk, a lot less external stuff going on many times. And so to me, this is where we hit that point of that where it's the most, where we really are internalized, and a lot of the communications with others are at its low point, because there's a lot of self-communication going on. And our thoughts have really hit a very subjective area at this point. It's actually hard to relate to other people during the inferior conjunction, because we're so subjectively in our own stuff, in our own thoughts, that it's very difficult not only to communicate with them to others, but to even create the necessary give and take in communication that we need, where we need to be a good listener, because we're all just so wrapped up in our own problems and our own thoughts inside that it's very hard to focus on the outside. But it is a good time to see how we relate to the world and the energy that we put out and how it comes back to us, and kind of chew that over before we start moving forward, because that can help us figure out better approaches, and then we can start to organize those approaches inside, kind of come up with a plan about how we're going to do that once Mercury retrograde starts to go forward again, when Mercury starts to go forward again. So, it's like I said, it's really that middle point of the Mercury retrograde cycle, where we can really be very, very subjective, and it's just not a time where the outer stuff is working well, and it's really a good time to internally chew over a lot of that stuff. And the last thing I want to mention, on Sunday, there's a really nice Venus square Jupiter, one of the nicer squares. And, and this is about enjoying life, especially with your friends and family, enjoying the pleasures of life. It's very passive energy. It's very low discipline, but it's a fun Sunday transit. It's one of those things, yeah, go do something fun, have a social get-together, go do an R&R trip, or, little day trip or something, have a picnic, whatever, have some fun, but just realize that, the discipline is really low. You're going to probably be very, a little bit on the excessive side, may overspend some money on things you don't need, really. And, problems are kind of swept under the rug with people. It's kind of like everybody has, the good manner. So, keeps things optimistic and friendly and happy on the outside. But it's really one of those things where there's not a lot of motivation to do anything very difficult or related to work or things like that. So that's our journey for this week, you guys. Like I said, we're in the middle of the Mercury retrograde. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're chewing over this week as it gets deep into the middle of the cycle. And especially with that quincunx to Pluto being active again, we're really going to see a lot of our stuff and how that works in the world, about how other people's stuff works in the world. It can be frustrating and irritating at times, but it's stuff that we're supposed to be working on, letting go, adjusting to, and try not to get in stuck positions. When Mercury goes back into Leo, like I said, make sure you're right if you're going to give advice or even make a statement, because Mercury retrograde will be unforgivable, and you may end up, with the proverbial foot in your mouth if you're not careful in that situation, and it could damage, reputation and all those things that is very important to Leo. So, a week we have to be a little bit, and that Mars square Saturn, like I said, will play right into that too, where we can feel really slowed down by circumstances. But we have that grand trine at Chiron, the sun and the moon, where we can work with that, bring some of our talents out, help each other out, give support to each other. And we've got that really nice Venus square Jupiter on the weekend. So next weekend should be a weekend, even with the Mars square Saturn going into the weekend, that Venus square Jupiter says, yeah, go out and enjoy yourself, have, do some things that you really like to do, and, connect with some people that you like to, and you can have some fun in the middle of this Mercury retrograde stuff. All right, guys, next week we've got a full moon, and it's in Aquarius. It's at 29 degrees, so that's like a pretty critical one there coming up, so I'll be talking about that for sure. The other thing, there was one other thing I did want to mention this week, you guys. I did mention it a little bit in the last week or two. So Mars is going to conjunct Jupiter this week too, and that's on Wednesday. I actually should have that written in here because it's a pretty big one. We got Mars conjunct Jupiter on Wednesday, and I mentioned this a lot last week because it was coming up, right? So this is going to bring an incredible amount of energy in the middle of the week before it hits the Saturn square. And there's going to be a lot of optimism, a lot of desire to expand. So you can really work well with that grand trine, okay? There's a lot of optimism to push your things forward. But remember, we're going to get a lot of resistance too from the square to Saturn and the Mercury retrograde. And even the day that Mars does do the exact conjunction to Jupiter, that day the moon is opposite both of them. So there's going to be a lot of challenges once again involved in this. And once again, my main concern with this energy is that we fly off the handle, almost do a false optimism and start making decisions in the middle of the Mercury retrograde period that we shouldn't be doing, that we should be kind of waiting out, because, we got this energy behind us where we're really wanting to push stuff and really wanting to expand things that are in our personal world. So once again, I think it's best if we can work on things that we're already involved in with this energy, try to clear the decks with this energy during this period, during this week or two, where you can just like get through a lot of the older projects that you have with this Mars Jupiter energy instead. You know, remember too, it's in Gemini too, so like it's our ideas that are driving us forward right now. So during the Mercury retrograde period, we really want to double check those ideas, you know. And this is like a very freedom-seeking energy. So it's really looking once again for like, where can I, you know, really express myself and be who I am. But this is definitely a good day, Wednesday, middle of the week, to do active physical things too, you know, physical work or, you know, workouts or whatever it may be, sports. You know, it's just like we have to be really careful about taking risks and getting overly optimistic, especially during this Mercury retrograde period. But I think going right into the Mars square Saturn after that, it will slow us down. And like I said, I talked a little bit about that last week for sure. And, you know, it's an energy that's been coming on. And unfortunately, right in the middle of the Mercury retrograde and at the same time that Mars is squaring Saturn, will pull a lot of the energy of the exuberance that conjunction normally has back and bring it down. And I really think, once again, the best way to use that is like motivate that, use that motivation and energy to get through old stuff and deal with that stuff before trying to move forward. All right, like I said, guys, next week we got a full moon in Leo. In Aquarius, opposite Leo at the 29th degree. So that's going to be a very powerful one. Check in with that. And like I said, please pass the link along to somebody else right now. I would really, really appreciate that. That's the way I get the blog to grow. When you're ready to get a reading or someone else's, please check out the website for the menu there. If you'd like to support the blog with a little donation, there's the Venmo handle. Every $5 you give right now enters you into a raffle, a chance into a raffle to win a free reading. So I'd really appreciate that. Thanks so much, everyone. I will see you all next week, and we'll end up talking about that full moon and see how that's going to affect us all. Until then, let's just try to skirt through this tough Mercury retrograde energy. Try not to push it out on other people. Bring it back inside. Take a look inside yourself. Make those adjustments inside first. I'll see y'all next week.